When we talk about acids and bases, we have to consider the pH scale. And the pH scale is based on acid base concentration. So technically, the word pH means the power of hydrogen, and it's a measurement of the concentration of hydrogen ions in solution. The brackets that you see here mean concentration whenever you see that. So the more hydrogen ions that you have, the more acidic the solution is. So what that means is if you have a solution with a pH of 5, it's 10 times more acidic than a solution with a pH of 6. And that's what's called a logarithmic scale. We're not going to be calculating logarithms or anything like that in here, but it is essentially exponentially increases the acidity of it. So that means something with a pH of 0 is 10 times more acidic than something with a pH of 1. pH of 1 is 10 times more acidic than 2, and that continues as we go higher and higher. So the higher the number, the less acidic it is. So acidic solutions have a high concentration but a low pH. So the acidic pH is between 0 and 6.99. Neutral solutions have an equal number of hydrogen and hydroxide ions. This makes a lot of sense when we consider that when we add hydrogen to hydroxide, we get water. We have two H's and one O. So all neutral solutions have a pH of 7. So pure water is neutral. You don't have to know the superscripts here, but it would be 10 to the negative 7. So we move the decimal 10 to the left. So that means there's a very, very low amount of H, and the H is equal to the amount of hydroxide. So neutral H is equal to OH. One specific, you should know all of the examples that are on the right side of this um, diagram here, specifically that of blood. Blood is going to have a pH range between 7.35 and 7.45. So technically, on the pH scale, it's actually slightly alkaline, but our body always needs to maintain that pH range of 7.35 to 7.45. The alkaline range, and the word alkaline means basic, it has a low concentration of hydrogen, but a high pH. So the pH range would be between 7.01 and 14. So on the test, if I asked you what lemon juice or gastric juice was, you should know it's a pH of 2. You should know some other examples like sodium hydroxide is very basic. It has a pH of 14, which is the highest you can go. And that's the extreme opposite of hydrochloric acid, which could have a pH of 0. When you take chemistry classes, your teacher is going to dilute the hydrochloric acid that you would use before the students actually use it so it doesn't cause harm. So when we combine a acid with a base, when they are mixed together, that's what's called a neutralization reaction, and a displacement reaction occurs, which was that exchange reaction. But it's a double exchange reaction here. So think of two couples going to the prom and they switch partners. So here we have a base called sodium hydroxide and an acid called hydrochloric acid. When they react, they produce a salt, which would be sodium chloride, and water. So you can see that the sodium combines automatically with the chloride to make a salt and water. That's always what happens in a neutralization reaction. The significance of this in the body is we have what are called buffer systems. Buffer systems are free hydrogens in solution not bound to anions, and those buffers can resist abrupt or large swings in pH. So they can release hydrogen ions if the pH rises or bind hydrogen ions if the pH falls. And we'll see an example of that next. Because remember, they need to make adjustments to ensure that the blood pH stays between 7.35 and 7.45. So in this example, which you don't have to know the buffer system now, you'll learn about these next semester in A&P2, but you need to know what a buffer system is, what the purpose is. It protects against large pH changes. And there are enzymes that work in the body only within a very narrow pH range, again, of 7.35 to 7.45. So if our pH was out of this range, those enzymes would no longer work. So an arterial pH of 7 is very bad. And if someone's doing CPR, that would produce very poor outcomes. And less than 6.85, they rarely survive. So there's buffers which are in the blood. There's also a buffer system from the kidneys and also from the lungs. So these buffer systems work by either adding an H or removing an H. So again, if something is going to be too basic, let's say that the pH becomes 7.46 and we need to get it back to 7.45. Doesn't seem that significant, but remember it's an exponential scale here. So this is a negative feedback system. This is our stimulus, and this is a response. Since they're opposite, we know it's a negative feedback system. So there is a hydrogen, which is released. When that hydrogen is released, that is going to lower the pH. If we went in the opposite direction, then an H would be removed, as in this situation here. This entire buffer system, again, you're going to learn about it next semester when you cover the respiratory system. So with organic compounds, there is synthesis and hydrolysis. So essentially, those two mean the same things. So you should know that, I'm sorry, they're actually opposites. Like, excuse me for saying that. So dehydration synthesis is the removal of water, and hydrolysis is the addition of water to break a bond. So carbon is electroneutral. It shares electrons. Remember, it forms 4 covalent bonds because it only has 4 valence electrons. And major organic molecules are these 4 that I've already mentioned, and we'll see more coming up. Many are polymers, and they can be broken down into their monomers. So they're synthesized by dehydration synthesis. And you should know, again, that this is the removal of water. And hydrolysis, the suffix lysis really means to cut, and it's cutting a bond. So that water is going to be used to cut that bond. So some of the examples of this in the human body are shown here. We can put any monomer that we want here. It can either be it can be an amino acid, it could be glucose, it could be a fatty acid, but 2 amino acids combined would eventually produce a larger polymer. And then hydrolysis is the exact opposite. So one example in the human body is combining glucose with another carbohydrate called fructose produces sucrose. And we'll be talking about those names coming up in the next video.